The US has just attacked Iran last night, and this is going to potentially have enormous consequences for the whole world.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
So we ask, what is going to happen in the months to come? Are we actually going to war? And also, how is this going to influence your investments in the stock market? But before starting with the economic consequences of these events, let us take one step back to understand what's happened so far. On April 12, 2025, the United States and Iran began a series of negotiations aimed at reaching a nuclear peace agreement following a letter from President Trump to the Supreme Leader of Iran. In a letter, Trump set a 2-month deadline for Iran, basically saying either you dismantle your nuclear program and will lift sanctions on Iran, or there are going to be consequences. The deadline passed on the 12th of June, and Iran didn't do what the US asked. So Israel decided to attack Iran, starting a full-scale war, and yesterday, on June the 22nd, President Trump delivered a direct military strike on Iran's nuclear sites, marking the first significant US attack on Iranian soil in decades. This was the first US direct military action on Iran since 1979, and things are escalating quickly. Iran has vowed everlasting consequences, including, among others, threats to close the Strait of Hormuz. So why is this important? Because 20% of global oil supply flows through the strait. If they do close it, this would lead to a major spike, which is going to have a strong effect on the markets and the economy. So far, we've had these movements. US indexes dropped almost 1%. Oil is increasing in price since the beginning of the negotiations in April and could rise much more if the Strait of Hormuz gets closed. VIX, which is a volatility index that tells you how volatile the S&P 500 will be, increased in value. Energy stocks outperformed, with companies like Chevron increasing thanks to rising oil, and Bitcoin decreased because investors now are looking for safer havens, so more inflows towards the dollar, the US Treasuries, and gold. So first of all, as an investor, you must expect a lot of volatility ahead. The real catalyst for markets will be whether Iran disrupts oil flows or hits US assets, which, if it happens, is going to increase volatility and also see a drop in the US market. So as Wells Fargo's head of global equities and real assets said in a phone interview with MarketWatch, S&P 500 may be up in June, but Iran attacks and tariff fears are good reasons to rethink risk. To put it in simple words, with the S&P 500 basically at an all-time high, with such a critical situation, Wells Fargo says, don't play the game. Don't risk your money. Or using their words, you're not getting paid to take the risk until maybe later this year. The reason is that the risk-adjusted performance of the S&P 500 is becoming dangerously low. This is because volatility rose, but gains haven't been so high. In fact, as you can see from this graph, the S&P 500 currently has an annualized risk-adjusted return ratio of 0.1, well below the median annual value since 1990, which is 1. So you get a really critical tariff situation on one hand, and rising tensions in the Middle East on the other. Because of this, on the 18th of June, we've had the 4th consecutive meeting of the Fed where interest rates haven't been lowered. Powell mentioned low unemployment rate, elevated inflation, and economic activity that still appear to be expanded at a solid pace. So, since I can't tell you, or I shouldn't tell you what to do because I'm not a financial advisor, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. Because in the end, nobody can know exactly how the market is going to react in the weeks to come because none of us has a crystal ball. And also, even though I'm glad I've been right many times in the past, there will come a day when I tell you something and the opposite is going to happen. So the only thing I can do is to share with you the consideration that I make for my own investments, and you just make your own decision. So, point number 1, the price of oil is increasing, and as I said, it may increase much more if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz. In terms of consequences for the US and the world, I expect inflation to grow even up to 6% by the end of the year if this happens. And if inflation grows, as you know, the Fed is going to delay rate cuts, which is going to have a negative effect on the stock market. For this reason, this month and probably also next month, I'm going to stop my investments and my DCA because I want to see first how this situation develops. I know you're already getting mad because I always say that you should always keep on DCAing every month into the stock market. I know that, and it's usually the right thing to do. Probably even this time is the right thing to do. But with the S&P 500 at an all-time high and such a critical situation, I simply don't feel like investing this for now. Don't do what I do. I'm a nobody and I know it. Point number 2, volatility. The market is going to be volatile in the next months. We might see the S&P 500 pulling back, and we're already seeing investors rotating into Treasury, gold, and the US dollar. So for sure, I can tell you, don't invest in crypto now. Crypto is a risky asset, and risky assets usually get hit the most in these situations. And also, as I always say, consider diversifying internationally. Maybe you believe in the long-term success of the US, like I do, but remember that we might be entering a troubling decade. Or we're already in it actually. And diversifying globally through an ETF like VT or VXUS lowers your total risk and gives you access to markets that might grow much stronger in the future. Always remember that if one day other markets perform better than the US, which has happened many times in the past, you're not just going to be able to sell all your S&P 500 investments and move them to international. So better to always be balanced and have a little bit of international in your portfolio. Point number 3, please don't panic sell. No matter what happens, don't make the mistake that many investors made when Trump announced the tariffs in February this year. And as you remember, the market pulled back up really quickly, and all the people that didn't listen to me and sold saw the market jump back within a couple of weeks, and it must have been painful. Point number 4, consider safe havens like gold and treasuries. Gold is showing a really strong momentum since around 10 years, and it shows how gold is actually what investors turn to whenever there is instability. And you can buy it with ETFs. For example, in the US, the Spider Gold Shares is the world's largest gold ETF. Or if you invest from Europe, the largest gold ETF is the iShares Physical Gold ETC, with 0.12% expense ratio and over 20 billions in assets under management. Number 5, remember to hold cash reserves. My rule of thumb is to always have 6 months worth of expenses in a high-yield savings account so that I have it accessible whenever I need it. Number 6, consider and monitor the key triggers that can move the stock market right now. So first of all, Iran's response, above all regarding the Strait, or how much the US is going to get involved in the next weeks, and what the Fed is going to say about inflation and energy in the next weeks. And number 7, the last one, remember that when I publish these kinds of videos, only subscribers get notified. So if you want to stay updated as an investor, the best thing you can do is to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so that your friend YouTube notifies you when a new video comes out. So guys, let me know what your thoughts are and what your investing moves are going to be. The audience will be happy to know what everybody's planning to do, so don't be shy and write a comment with your opinion. We have a wonderful community here. Everybody's respectful, so don't hold back and tell us what you think. So this was a quick update on what's happening. Drop a like to the video if it was helpful, and as always, I wish you a great evening, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao!